friends, welcome once again to the Perfect Bound Podcast. This is a podcast all about anything and everything comic books and comics related, brought to you by the Panel Jumper and Comics Dungeon. My name is Ben. With me, as always, is Cole Hornaday.
Hey!
Nicole Lamb.
Hello!
And Chris Casso.
Hello.
So, we're here at the lovely Comics Dungeon. I don't know what's going on there, but I'm just going to ignore it.
Just making ferret faces, because that's something we do.
So, it's, if you've listened to the show for the last couple of weeks, you might have heard me mention how hot it's been in Seattle. Well, fortunately, the heat is broken. It's cooled off a bit. The heat has broken. I'm not going to find anybody to fix it. Hashtag these are the jokes. Okay.
Wait, but before we leave this room, before we leave the joke room, what is this bit of business about this art installation where they're going to be dropping a block of ice?
It's already there. It's already there. Occidental Park.
Oh, it's an Occidental Park.
In Pioneer Square.
Right,
and it's like a 5 by 5 foot, or no, I think it's even larger. I think it's like a 6 by 6 cubic foot block of ice.
Okay.
It's an art installation to see how long it'll take until it melts.
Okay, so then hipsters will come crawling out of the alleys and hoot and holler and dance around it, touch it, and then throw bones up in the sky that turn into space stations?
No, they'll carve holes to put their PBR in to cool it.
Yeah, the thing is going to be destroyed.
So this is not a species transitional moment for us.
No,
It's not Kubrick.
We know who put it there.
It's a beer cooler. It's a free beer cooler.
The thing is going to be destroyed before it naturally melts. I guarantee you that.
All right, but this is art. This is art. This is for art.
Art? I don't know what art is anymore. Okay. So, I was going to say, speaking of art, but then it would sound disingenuous. Speaking of comics, because that's why we're here. Hey, is there anything coming up at the dungeon that we should know about?
Well, there's a few things. We have book clubs, as always. Our after hours ladies book club just passed, but we have a general book club, and we'll be reading The Vision. That'll be September 16th here at the dungeon from 7 to 8. And then next up will be Batman Day, which is September 17th. I think we plan on having maybe some sales. We'll have a special issue of Batman.
They're reprinting Batman Rebirth one-shot number 1, Rebirth one-shot, whatever. The number 0 number 1, but not the number 1 number 1.
How many number ones is that?
I don't know.
2.
And so that's going to be a reprint of the Tom King story. And so we will have copies of that on hand to pass out. And then we'll probably do some big blowout sale on our Batman back issues, and that includes all the Bat family as well. Mm-hmm. And,
so it'll be a big Batman blowout bonanza?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Booyah!
We'll post all those details on our Facebook page.
Now, I don't recall, is the Batman Day, that's a thing now, right? Is that it's been institutionalized.
3 years now.
And now, is there some significance of that day? What day is it? The 17th?
Is it like Bruce
The
Wayne's
17th,
birthday or
yeah.
something?
17th
At some
of
point, it was like the 75th
September.
anniversary for Batman, but now
Okay.
they're just like, we made so much money, let's do it again.
and that's the significance of the day. It's spend
Is
money on Batman Day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like most American traditions.
Right.
It's around a sale
Word
or
up.
something.
Time Warner just
Yeah.
being like, hey, worship us.
Yes.
Once more, bow your heads to us. Hand over your wallets.
So, speaking of Batman, Ben Affleck, who is Batfleck, has he teased the villain in the upcoming standalone Batman film as he teased Deathstroke, and it's been confirmed by Geoff Johns that Joe Manganiello will actually play the role of Deathstroke in the upcoming Batman standalone movie that I thought was going to also be written by Batfleck, but he's just directing and starring in it.
It's probably for the best.
He likes to do the directing, starring thing.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Deathstroke has been in the Arrow series.
Right.
But that's interesting that now we're living in an era where there are characters that are spread between the two mediums and played by different actors.
Double reps, like Flash.
Yeah. Well, that's
is
interesting too,
strange.
because that representation of Flash in the movies is what it looks to be a great deal different than the TV series characterization.
Yeah.
I finally saw the Joker Squad, Suicide Squad.
yeah.
And you know what? I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah, see, it's
But
like
it's a good
middle of the
scene.
road.
Yes, yeah. I was actually surprised, but what I did was I call it my Alien versus Predator formula, where I just lower my expectations for that film into the sub basement of my reality.
It's not quite as fun as Freddy versus Jason, though, in my eyes.
Well, I never got to that one.
That one's a good one. If you have
when you commit,
no expectations, you're gonna thoroughly enjoy it.
You were just sort of whoopsie. Sorry. You were just sort of swimming through the void of absent expectationism. No,
it's a good place.
I submitted to that formula a lot, and the last Alien versus Predator movie was worse than that.
Yeah, that one didn't work.
It was horrible.
How many have there been? Because the first AVP has a really special place.
The second one was like beyond already.
Oh yeah, that's the one that's set in the town in the mountains and
Silent Hill.
What's that?
Silent Hill?
Alien versus Predator. That would have been fun.
Right?
Yeah, that would have been fun. Anyway, Suicide Squad. I actually thought many of the characterizations were quite fun. I could not give a rat's patootie about Jared Leto and his Joker.
Yeah,
and the Harley Quinn interpretation of our age is just nothing but offensive to me. But, I liked Will Smith. I liked all the other characters. I thought Killer Croc was fun.
No spoilers. I haven't seen it yet.
The only thing, I'm going to say this and we can move on.
Which is probably going to be a spoiler.
Close your ears.
I thought the interpretation of Amanda Waller is one of the most offensive things I've seen in a long time.
Offensive?
Yeah. They made her a sociopath, and I didn't dig that. She's Machiavellian, but I don't remember her being that evil.
I know what you're thinking.
Because she's just on...
I didn't enjoy that either.
No.
I've heard some arguments that she would be that hardcore, but I don't
agree.
like that.
I don't agree at all.
I don't like that interpretation.
Nope.
I like the Justice League animated version where she is very scary.
We've talked about that.
You don't want to mess with her.
Right. She's intimidating, and she is the wall. She's this big, proud, scene-dominating woman, and that's why she's awesome, and we didn't get that in this film. We got one more sociopath with a gun.
Right.
Well,
Anyway.
Speaking of the future of DC.
Yes, here we go.
Well, now Cole Hornaday actually does he does a service to all of us, and he runs the Panel Jumper Facebook group, and he posts articles almost daily. And one of the ones that I picked up
I swipe a lot up from Brother Chris, though. I swipe a lot from Brother Chris.
Okay, so Chris does the service, and Cole just steals from him.
Yes, yeah.
But one
It's a
thing
Robin Hood kind of situation.
I appreciate all of you because that's where I get a lot of my news, and that's where some of the content here comes from. And what I want to talk about now is Geoff Johns on the future of the DCEU.
Yeah.
And the headline of this is "Relax, we're changing everything."
We got this.
Yeah.
Guys, we got this.
It's not going to be because DC is supposed to be like gritty and dark, and that's what makes him different. And Geoff Johns is like, no, we're going to put optimism in it. And like even Batman, we're waiting. Even Batman has a glimmer of optimism in him. If he didn't, he wouldn't make it. If he didn't, then he'd make it. Let me see if I can actually read.
Okay.
If he didn't think he'd make tomorrow better, he'd stop. So that's what I was trying to say. So they actually.
It's a lovely quote. I wish I could believe it.
When Batman v Superman had such a terrible reaction, they sped up production of the Justice League to try to make it more optimistic and sort of cut off the bad taste that everybody has in their mouth. But what I
Sort of give them an after-dinner mint from the spoiled souffle that was Batman versus
I thought was
Superman.
funny is that Zack Snyder is still directing the Justice League movie, and isn't he the one we blame for the dark and greediness?
It's his lovely murder world we all get to go play, and we go to the movie theaters. It's his Ayn Rand vision of reality that he insists on depicting in these films. So
Yeah, I think it's a combo effect of the corporate directors as well.
there is that.
So it's like I don't. After watching Sucker Punch, I don't think he has enough content in his own personality to actually be fully accountable for all the darkness.
I think part of the problem is that film studios will label directors for certain genres. I mean, Tim Burton was the comic book guy for a long time, and his first two Batman films are kind of overlooked now, but at the time that was the only game in town for comic book movies. Where his first two Batman films at the time were actually quite brilliant. I have not got. Did you go back and revisit them recently?
I have not, but
okay,
I
thought
should.
You had. I have not either.
I want to do Returns because I've done Jack Nicholson Joker Batman, but
once the Nolan films came along, I was like, I don't think we can do any better than that, even though it's still not, the consummate Batman story. That's a pretty darn good Batman story. It doesn't necessarily jibe with the comic books. What is my point? My point is that
not responsible for the
I
darkness?
fear that Warner has sort of chosen Snyder as the go-to comic book film guy, but he doesn't necessarily deserve that responsibility nor that power.
Yeah.
I think that the directors that Marvel Studios gets to do their films, they get it. They know they get that vision of reality that they're trying to depict. Mm-hmm. There's just something profoundly wrong about how Zack Snyder goes about it. And you, Chris, you were talking about Sucker Punch, and I think you made a really good point about how there's an absence of creative thought happening there, because Sucker Punch was one of the most miserably dreary and boring movies I have watched in forever, and it shouldn't have been. It should have been fun. It should have been a cornucopia of wonderful imagery, and it was just dreary.
It's basically a music video. It's an extended music video, and then he was like, "Oh, there's got to be a plot."
Oh yeah,
and then he started throwing plot in there, and it's actually one of the most frustrating movies to me because it's very anachronistic, and I didn't know
so?
I hated things like that until I saw that movie.
You mean with the World War II stuff and the...
Well, so like it took place before World War II, and so she's a small town girl thrown into an asylum, and she's dreaming up dystopian future sci-tech stuff. It's like, okay, I could kind of let that go, but then they start throwing World War II stuff and like robots with Gatling guns that weren't invented until World War II. So it's just sort of like, why are you doing this? She wouldn't have the context for any of that stuff. So how can she dream any of it?
How can she conjure it?
Right. There's like, I know I'm supposed to have a suspension of disbelief, but there still has to be some logic to that disbelief.
I think there's a really interesting conversation that we could go off on for a long, long time, and that is the anachronism of dream realities.
Right. Yeah.
That God, I like that idea.
I'm sure I've dreamt things that haven't been invented yet.
I'm sure you have been.
Like happiness.
Come on in here. Come on in.
So I'm sorry, you were saying something.
No, I just...
These are the jokes, folks.
You started talking about Sucker Punch, and there was the most beautiful pitch you had when you first started talking about it is a girl thrown into an insane asylum, and I heard Alice in Wonderland in there, so it's like this Alice in Wonderland in an insane asylum. I'm like, that's a good pitch. Somewhere in there.
I think that's a video game.
Right. Yeah, American McGee.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably part of the problem with that film and a lot of that sort of thing for my sensibilities is I grew up in the age of MTV, and yeah, you're right. It was a great video game movie, or not video game, but MTV video movie. But that's the way they described Highlander when it came out, and that became a cult film. We have moved beyond that in sensibilities, so that kind of begs the question: why the hell was this film made? And supposedly, this was his auteur piece. This was the summation of his storytelling vision.
Sucker Punch?
Yeah. This was his dream project. To me, that's what a dream project means.
Anyway,
Right. I need to stop talking.
No, Justice League. I mean, I hope it's good. I want the DC to EU to succeed.
You do?
I do.
Why do you care?
Because.
Haven't they hurt you enough, Ben?
Well, maybe I deserved it.
The masochistus.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on away from this, and let's.
I thought that was the door.
Oh, this chair.
Okay.
And I want to mention this. I sent you all a picture in the show notes how Squirrel Girl taught me how to count in binary using one hand. It's from Unbeatable Squirrel Girl number 11.
Which is going to come out like in a couple weeks.
Oh, it's not out yet?
Yeah.
Well, go pick that up, people, because you'll learn how to count in binary, which I think is fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw some more. I went to a different site that had a few extra pages on that, and it looks so good. So good. And it's also like very metal towards the end. Like she uses the binary thing to fight off Nightmare, who's a creature of nightmares, and Venom, and it's like just like it's her doing the metal thing, and it's pretty fantastic. So yeah.
All right. And apropos of nothing that we've talked about yet, Netflix has teased the Punisher solo series for 2017. This is I'm only bringing this up because they originally said it was going to be out in 2018. They moved it up. Jessica Jones, I think, is still coming out in 2018. I don't know when the next Marvel's Daredevil is going to come out.
We got Luke. When's Luke Cage?
Luke is at the end of this month.
Oh, it is. It's that soon. I didn't realize.
Soon. It's gonna bring me joy and happiness.
Yeah,
which I need after Jessica Jones.
Wow.
Yeah, not a lot of joy and happiness after Jessica Jones. Anyway, Netflix kind of bringing us our Marvel TV. Moving on to another topic. I gotta find a better way to segue between these topics.
Just do you, Ben.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
That's all you can.
Well, y'all groan and give verbal rim shots when I do me.
That's Cole.
Hashtag these are the jokes. Hey guys, Image Comics is moving to Portland. They were in San Francisco, I think, but now they're moving to PDX. They're going to be joining Dark Horse and Oni Press and the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. Does this matter? Does the headquarters of a comic publisher influence any of the titles?
Generally, I would say not that much, not these days.
Yeah.
Since we're at a better point where a lot of creators can do everything from home and just ship it out digitally and everything like that. But
there are a lot of creators in Portland, though.
Yeah, there are a lot of creators in the Pacific Northwest. It does beg the question, why?
Because people like to stay inside around here?
Possibly. It's also
might be some tax stuff thrown in there.
proximity to Seattle, and the Comic Con in Portland. The Rose City Comic Con is climbing as an alternative to Emerald City, and Emerald City is going to become a juggernaut, as we all know.
Right.
Not quite San Diego Comic Con juggernaut capacity, but I don't know. See, I haven't gone in the last 2 years, you guys. What would you say?
I think.
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, it feels like I think it would benefit them to have that kind of proximity to Emerald, and they also did the Image Expo as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
As
they did that in California, and they just started one in Seattle last year. So now they're West Coast.
Makes it a little bit more convenient for them and for storage purposes as well.
Right.
So once upon a time, all print publishing was in New York, and that changed. And DC and Marvel were actually on the same block. And artists, artists and editors and writers would go back and forth between the two offices sometimes. And then that changed with digital, and then DC moved to be closer to Hollywood and the film studios, and that's understandable. I guess I wish I could talk to somebody inside Image and find out what the logic behind moving to Portland is, because
They just don't like pumping their own gas.
Yeah, they're tired of that.
And the marijuana, was legal, and stuff like that.
Well, we got that here.
Yeah, but price of living here, buddy.
Yeah, no sales tax.
Price of living
Oregon.
here is kind of okay. No sales tax. Some other clown's going to pump your gas. Marijuana. What else we got?
Is it legal in Portland? Or
I thought it was.
I didn't think.
But,
I thought it was still just
anybody.
Washington
Any
and
Portland
Colorado.
listeners, please correct me,
We
please.
should go next door to the pod shop and see what they have to say about it. For whatever reason, maybe it's... I mean, they were in San Francisco, and come on, that's an expensive city. So it's
Super
probably a
expensive.
cost-cutting
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
measure. So anyway, so that's happening. If you live in Portland, say hello to the Image kids. They'll be on your block. Speaking of Image, Invincible is coming to an end. Robert Kirkman has written a letter and saying that he's going to bring the title to an end, basically announcing that he was hoping another creative team would take it over, but that isn't happening. So I think the last issue is going to come out like in a year from now.
Okay.
But yeah, Invincible, is it popular? I see there's a whole shelf of it over there.
It does. It has a solid following,
Yeah.
but that following doesn't grow like Walking Dead does. And
Kirkman's a money generator. I mean, every other property he pens has been optioned. I don't think Outcast. I've never seen the Outcast TV show.
I haven't seen it, but
And
doing okay.
Thief of Thieves got optioned, and when that option happened, I remember the first print of the first issue. The value of that shot through the roof, and now you can't get rid of them because that TV series never
It's still up through the roof. It's still like
Is it?
$60 to $70.
Really? Because I couldn't sell mine for that.
Yeah.
No, I sold mine for 20 and it was signed.
There you go.
So
You won.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just saying, just some little bit of experience there. But Invincible, I think it is a book. One of the reasons why I'm looking at the most recent reprint, volume 22, called Reboot, that I actually read last week. I won't be reviewing it because I don't really see the point, because
He's a bit formulaic for
he's
me.
terribly formulaic, and actually after reading this, I think it's ready for the San Francisco book to shut down.
Yeah.
Because he jumped the shark in this book, and that's kind of an oxymoron to say a superhero comic or any comic at all, to criticize it for jumping the shark. But he did one of the things that I really, really don't like, and that is, let's go back in time and do it all over again. So Mark goes back in time and is to the day before he got his superpowers, the day before the issue number 1 started, and is now telling everybody not to do this and cutting off situations at the pass. And Nicole's making the sour face, and I share the sour faces, but I'm doing it inside.
Yes.
And I was really frustrated by that. I'm like, that's just an indication that you are bored with writing this material, and maybe it's time to shut it down. So.
Nighthawk is also being canceled, I think mostly due to low sales numbers. Was that title any good? I've never read it.
I didn't read it because the problem for me that I think that a lot of people are overlooking is that the Squadron Supreme that Nighthawk comes from is one of the most horribly convoluted concepts in comics, and they made it worse this year. And that's
Post-Secret Wars?
Yeah, post-Secret Wars, in that the current roster of the Squadron Supreme isn't just a team of people from an alternate dimension. It's a team where every member is from a different alternate dimension.
Oh, jeez.
It's a nightmare.
So this Nighthawk is from the J. Michael Straczynski version called Supreme Power. And it's just like, I don't want to keep track of that. I didn't care for that version. He's probably a more interesting version than the normal Nighthawk, and that tells you something right there that I still don't care.
Well, tell the good people about the genesis of Squadron Supreme and Nighthawk to begin
Please
with.
don't make me.
That's the entire episode. All right, well, I'm sorry.
That's an
Then
entire episode.
But it's they originally started out as an analog to the Justice League.
Yeah,
and he was a clear analog to Batman.
Yeah,
That's
he's
all.
straight up
I was
Batman.
just trying to steer you in that direction. That's all. That's all I needed from you, buddy. That's all.
There's an episode, or there's one of the reviews I did for Secret Wars that had the most convoluted breakdown of what Secret Wars Squadron Supreme was. So that actually is worth talking about, because it's a good revisit on the idea of analogs and derivatives, and that's what Squadron Supreme is. Because the thing is, there's also the Squadron Sinister, which are the evil version of the Squadron Supreme, and it's just like no.
So, I mean, on a different note of the Nighthawk getting canceled, it's a thing that happens, that's happened time and time again. It's not an uncommon thing where a title will get a certain amount of praise and love, and there'll be a fan base, and it'll get canceled, and it'll really bum a bunch of people out.
Right.
It happened, like, my husband was reading Fearless Defenders, which had very low sales, but for the people that bought it, they loved it.
Yeah.
The letters page was just filled with, thank you, love this, inspired me, or blah, 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 whatever. And it's just something that keeps happening because we're in an industry that is run by corporations who need money.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't provide that money, it can be an amazing piece of work, but it's just not going to last. And it's unfortunate, but that's the system that we're in.
Yeah, and this particular version of Nighthawk was a black Batman, correct? And I was going to say edgier, but now there's no such thing as nobody's any edgier than anybody else anymore.
Well, and I think the team that was working on it were also diverse and people of color, and so I think that that's also another level of like, well, great, now these people like who are a minority in the industry are also now out of that job,
True.
and so that's another side of it being a bummer.
But they have recently reprinted they printed the Squadron Supreme trade, the James Robinson post Secret Wars series that is the uber convoluted collection of characters.
Yep.
were you following that series at all?
I read the
Did you
first
give up?
issue and I
Okay.
realized that's what it was. I was
Yeah.
like, nope.
I read the first
I'm
issue
done
too.
with this.
I read the first issue too, and then I think you did a little, airflow chart for me.
Yeah.
This character's here,
Yeah.
and then my eyes started to glaze over, and I was like, no, I don't think I'm
I
gonna
believe
follow
that is the series where somebody does die in it, though.
Namor in the first
Yeah.
issue got his head sliced
That's the
off.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then not. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
one of those things of like, that's an obvious like bait and switch. I'm like,
Sure.
if that's what you're going to be that obvious, I'm not in the mood to wait.
Okay.
All right. Well, Nighthawk, it's coming to an end, but there is a trade that's going to be coming out of a collection. It's going to be coming out in January, so order it now and support that. Woo-woo. Let's move on to book report, everybody, and let's start with let's start with you, Chris.
Okay.
Cole's choking over.
I
here.
am. I'm getting over the flu, so I'm falling apart.
So I read Princess Ever After by Katie O'Neill, and it's from Oni Press. It's a nice hardcover, beautifully designed, and it is $12.99. It's a very quick read, so that's the only negative thing I'll say for the price point. Otherwise, I do like that it is a quick read. It's a adorable story about a wandering princess who decides that she wants to go on adventures on her own, and then she comes across a princess in the tower and decides to help her out, and the two of them pretty much fall in love. This is a queer-friendly read, and it doesn't kind of follow the normal princess story. There's like a prince that shows up later, and he's like, I don't want to be helped by girls, and they're like, okay, butthead, you're Prince Butthead from now on. and then they help him, and then he's like, oh, okay, I learned my lesson. But like there's like a beautiful sequence where they find like a cyclops mashing a town, and they're all fighting over like, how do we stop him? And one of the princes just like, can you just not do that? And he's like, oh, okay. And she's just like, if you want to learn how to dance, we could do that. And he's like, oh, okay. And then they show them like doing ballet, and it's cute. So yeah, it's really, really fun. I really like Katie O'Neill's art style. It's perfect for all ages. Like I said, the only negative thing is $13 is a little bit much for how quick of a read it was for me. But I get the feeling that if you're getting this for young readers, they're going to reread the heck out of it. And
in addition, would it be a book that grown-ups would be rereading to kids?
I think so.
Because remember, little kids, they love to have something read and reread and reread. So
Yeah.
$13 is not going to is nothing.
No.
If that book's going to be reread to a child like
I had
10
all
or
my
11
picture books
times.
memorized. when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
No, I think that's actually a very good point. It's a good price point for something that's going to get that kind of love, and I think it will. I always have like a different like spending hat as far as like what I'm going to put into my shelf.
course.
So that's where I'm just like, better price would have been $7.99.
Well, as a veteran reader to children, I as a seasoned veteran when it comes to reading to children, that's actually probably a pretty good deal there.
Cool, very cool. So yeah, I actually don't recall ever seeing Katie O'Neill's work elsewhere. It reminds me of a few other things, but I think she probably does some online material. There's some credits in the back. That I believe
Princess
said that.
Princess is a webcomic.
There we go. StrangelyKatie.com is where you can find it, and it's Katie, Katie. Yeah, well worth checking out.
All right, Princess Ever
Marvelous.
After.
Marvelous.
Thanks, Chris. Nicole.
Where are you going, Nicole?
She's
Bye.
Are you running? Oh, there
all
goes
right.
the show.
Coal Hornaday.
All right,
What did you-
and good night. Oh, what do you got?
I read Aftershock's new title, Alters, #1. It is written by Paul Jenkins. He's the creator and writer. Layla Lees is the artist. Tamra Bonvillain. Ooh, that's a good last name.
Bond villain?
No, not Bond villain,
Oh,
but
what a
yeah,
cool
that'd be
name.
great.
I'm Humphrey Bondavilla.
Tamra is the colorist, and Ryan Hill is the letterer. And alters are another word for superhumans, metahumans, yada yada. They're kind of like mutants, maybe, or inhumans, where you all of a sudden gain powers. You find out that you have some sort of superpower. And this follows one girl, and she's just found out she's an alter. And she also just started her transition to being a woman. She's a trans woman. And she's in high school. She's got her whole family does not know that she's trans. And
So there's a dual metaphor happening there?
Yes, there totally is. And the only time that she feels like she's herself is when she's dressed up as this super person, when she's off, using her alter powers. And it, also coincides with she dresses as a girl. She wears a wig and all that sort of stuff because she is a girl. So it's like a coming of age tale as well as a superhero story, and it was a really fun, strong first issue. If it didn't have like the trans elements, I don't feel like it would feel as fresh necessarily. It does remind me a little bit of Strong Female Protagonist, which is a webcomic. In that the way that they deal with supers, it's kind of in an alt sort of way. But I'd give it like a strong A. Like I thought that it was really good, and I'm definitely going to be following this series and seeing how it progresses.
I'm definitely going to put that in my box.
Yeah,
I will take that
it's
away
cool.
from you. Yeah, that looks really good.
What I also appreciated from it is that her brother, one of her brothers, has cerebral palsy.
Yes.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
And so you get that. I get the feeling he's going to be important as the story progresses, because she has a definite strong connection with him that they set up, whereas her other brother's kind of a d-bag.
He's kind of bro,
He's kind of bro.
He's
So
kind
is
of
this ongoing?
It is, yeah.
So what's your take on the new Aftershock label? Because I don't know anything about it.
It's kind of like Image Light for me.
Yeah.
There's no defining characteristic to the company. It's just create our own stuff, do whatever you will. And Warren Ellis has a project coming out. I think Amanda Connor has.
John, Warren Ellis, and Phil Hester. John.
Aftershock. Aftershock is a new publisher.
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
a newer
publisher.
publisher, and they're just kind of slowly rolling out things that are creator owned.
They did Insects and The Revisionist, Black Eyed Kids, sorry.
Animosity,
Tired.
Animosity.
They created the super band. No.
Animosity is a book that they just started where suddenly across the entire world, all animals gain sentience and can talk.
Right.
And some of that's for the best, some of it's for the not. And so there's just you can't define the company by
Right.
any one genre.
They're all very,
They're
very
all over
different.
the
Yeah.
place.
So nothing, no shared universes, just really solid independent storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, cool. Alters number one. Thanks, Nicole. Cole Hornaday, lay it on us.
I just read. How do I say this?
With words.
Another one. Thank you. Words are hard. I am really digging the Fantagraphics books.
These are the jokes.
It's a hard, heavy book. It will flatten you on the face. I am really digging these Fantagraphics EC Comics Library hardbound editions. They're still regularly producing these that are individual hardbound books devoted to individual creators from classic EC. So this one's called "The Corpse on the Imgem and Other Stories" by Harvey Kurtzman. I did not know much about Kurtzman reading this book. I knew that he was one of the original editors of Mad Magazine when it went to the magazine format. I know he was famous for Playboy's Little Annie Fanny. All things that I really never dug before, but I grew up and reading comic books and hearing so much about Kurtzman. So these are his war comics or his manly man comics, like predominantly the EC Frontline Combat and Two-Fisted Tales. These stories are not what you think they are. Kurtzman was really a socialist, and I think back in the day you would have called him a red, because every one of these stories is an anti-war statement. Many of these tales have very typical of EC Comics. They have that O. Henry twist where it's like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't anticipate that. And most of these war stories in this, be they set in Korea or during the Norman Conquest or whenever, they're told by a victim, or they're told by a loser in the battle, or they're told by the decapitated head that's hanging from the wall of someplace. They are anything but a celebration of what we now would call toxic masculinity. The other thing is that Kurtzman was he clearly influenced styles of a lot of artists, particularly Frank Miller. He's a very simplistic, expressionistic style that I think a lot of people kind of credited a lot of the Japanese artists from the 70s and 80s, like Otomo, and who did Lone Wolf and Cub. That's
Oh, I'll never pronounce that.
yeah,
name correctly.
okay.
I could find it for you.
Yeah, no, it's, well, but we credit a lot of those creators from Japan for giving us a lot of that really dynamic, expressionistic style, heavy inks. But Kurtzman drew precisely that way, and his style is really, really fascinating. And this is one of my first introductions to it. And I highly rate. Here you go.
Goseki Kojima.
Thank you. Not that those styles are exactly alike, but there's a similar type of influence happening to my mind. And when you look at like Frank Miller's artwork from the 80s, especially Daredevil, Ronin, that sort of thing, you see that influence there in particular. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm thoroughly enjoying all of these books because they are a new discovery for me, and also I'm in a hardcore immersion process as I start writing what episode 6 of the Panel Jumper
6.
will be devoted to EC Comics. So, cool.
And they're published by Fantagraphics,
They are.
who is a publishing house here in Seattle.
Exactly.
And the price point on them seems to be pretty good.
That one's
They're
about $25.
29.
Yeah. Oh, it is 29. Okay.
It looks dense though.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
like,
it's worth the money as far as I'm
it's
concerned.
definitely, and it's a nice
Yeah.
hardback.
I
which is
just
always
can't
good.
afford to. I've been kind of picking and choosing. I've been getting them from the library. I have bought a couple, but I just don't have any room in my home anymore for all these books.
Yeah.
But
right.
I am enjoying them.
Cool. Thanks, Cole. Corpse on the Imjin.
Exactly.
Alrighty. And that's Book Report, and that's our show. And coming up is quiz time. But before we go, I want to tell you that the Perfect Bound podcast is brought to you by the Panel Jumper. See everything Nicole Hornaday and I do at thepaneljumper.com. And by the Comics Dungeon here at 319 Northeast 45th Street in beautiful downtown Wallingford, or 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at comicsdungeon.com. Please subscribe to us on iTunes or any way you get your podcasts. You can also send us an email at perfectboundpodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what we got wrong, what we got right. Inform upon us what types of news stories you want to hear. And
tell Ben his transitions are perfect.
tell me my transitions, my segues are worth the cost of admission. Speaking of segues, I'm going to tell you about something that I'm doing, a little bit of self-promotion here.
Okay.
I produce the Sketchfest Seattle Comedy Film Challenge, and it's coming up this Saturday, September 17th at 7 p.m. at Central Cinema. I collect about 12 comedy films from around the North American continent and show them off to you guys, and you vote on them. We have celebrity judges, and it's at the Central Cinema, and you can eat food and drink booze all to your heart's content. And it's only $15, so visit sketchfest.org for details.
It's kind of one of your favorite things because it's Central Cinema, it's Sketchfest, it's comedy movies.
There's booze.
It's your
There's
friends-
booze, indeed.
It's your friends from
It's-
the comedy community.
Yeah.
And
It's my
so,
thing. I produce the
yeah.
entire evening, and so it's kind of like I'll be talking more about Sketchfest proper next week, but this thing's sort of my baby, and it's kind of what I'm responsible for. So please come, because it's a lot more fun when people come. And that is our show, and coming up is quiz time. So put your quiz hats on, everybody. This
Okay.
week the questions come to us from me, and we talked about The Punisher getting his own series on Netflix. These questions all have to do with each iteration of The Punisher.
Oh dear.
All right, number one, 1989's The Punisher, directed by Mark Goldblatt, saw Dolph Lundgren in the titular role. Filmed primarily in Australia, this Ozploitation picture saw Sydney Harbour's Luna Park stand in for what iconic Brooklyn theme park?
Coney Island?
Yes, Coney Island. It was actually filmed inside the Coney Island Funhouse in Australia.
I just remembered that one was just all in sewer tunnels. Wasn't that one all in sewer tunnels, the Dolph Lundgren one?
There were a couple.
And he doesn't ever wear his skull.
No, he never does.
I actually haven't seen it. All right, number two.
Don't.
Did he wear a shirt?
He wore a shirt but didn't have a skull on it. It was like there was... Anyway, keep going, buddy.
2004's The Punisher, directed by Jonathan Hensley, saw Thomas Jane in the titular role and was the first comic book movie adaptation to earn an R rating since what 1998 Wesley Snipes movie?
Blade.
Yeah, Blade. All right. Number 3, 2008 saw the release of The Punisher Warzone, directed by Lexi Alexander, with Ray Stevenson in the titular role. It holds what dubious distinction? This is kind of a weird one.
What dubious distinction?
Somebody getting shot with a bazooka.
No, I'm just gonna give it to you. It's the lowest grossing Marvel movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
That was the one that's adapted from the Ennis stories?
from the Max stuff.
But that was Garth Ennis, wasn't it?
Yeah.
See, and I like that. I like that series, and I actually enjoyed the movie for the screwball stuff that they did.
Well, that's the
Am
thing.
I talking about the right one?
Both movies stole from Garth Ennis.
Yeah,
so that's
okay.
the problem. One of them did it better.
Yeah, Punisher Warzone was
mix them up in my brain.
it was supposed to be a sequel, but also a reboot. They called it a requel.
Right.
They did
Wow.
not use that word.
They did
not use that word.
Yeah, one of the
They did-
producers is quoted as saying that.
Some
All
of us
right.
be spared.
Number 4, 2012 short The Punisher Dirty Laundry, directed by Phil Juno, saw the return of Thomas Jane in the titular role and a cameo by this Hellboy actor in the role of Big Mike.
Wasn't Ron Perlman.
It was Ron Perlman. All right.
My brain wanted to say Pearl Bigman.
Pearl Bigman. No,
Nicole's had a long day.
I'm tired.
she was on Hee Haw.
Oh god.
All right, and finally, in 2017, we will see the Punisher return with his own Netflix series with John Bernthal in the titular role. I don't know who will direct.
What's with the titular?
It's his new word.
The
it's
series-
his new favorite word.
I just gotta have a through line. The series is, of course, based on Bernthal's portrayal of the character in Season 2 of Netflix's Marvel's Daredevil. Bernthal has stated that when it was announced he would play the Punisher, fans would come up to him and say what? A, quote, don't mess this up. B, quote, I still hate Shane. Or C, they wouldn't say anything, they would just punch him in the stomach to see how tough he was.
I wish it's B.
I still hate
Yeah, I
Shane.
still hate Shane.
Anybody else?
I'm going to go with B, too.
No, it was A. They would come up to him and they would say, don't mess this up.
Man, that's just...
That's obnoxious.
Yeah, seriously.
Fans are obnoxious. All right, well, thank you for listening. That's our show, and we will see you next week.